So I'll just do some quick introductions. I am Dawn Thompson from Improving Birth, and you saw Kimberly's face there momentarily, and Kristen Pescucci, who at the time of when we first picked up Kimberly's case was our vice president, and she has gone on to now do her own thing with Birth Monopoly, which is great. And if you're not following that page, it's a brilliant page to follow. Check it out. So I wanted to just kind of give a brief history of Kimberly's situation. I know most of you have been following faithfully for the last 3 years. Kimberly shared her video online. So, well, I want to back up just a little bit. I had actually posted about 2 weeks before Kimberly reached out to us saying, thinking and feeling like, man, I wish we just had video of all, like we were constantly getting stories and emails from moms experiencing different variations of coercion and abuse in childbirth. And all I kept thinking was, man, if we just had a video that would show what's happening. And needless to say, a couple weeks later, we were introduced to Kimberly. So Kimberly shared her video online of her forced episiotomy that happened during her first birth with her son Rio, and it was by all accounts extremely traumatic. I know that there's a lot of people who have chosen not to watch that video. I don't blame you. I cannot watch it. Even though I've seen it, I can't watch it anymore. It's just does too much to me. But she, essentially, one of our followers saw her video. And the reason that Kimberly posted it initially was because she knew something just wasn't right about it. She wasn't sure, because everyone in her family was essentially like, get over it, episiotomies happen, that's just how things go, and, that sort of thing. And she just believed in her soul that it was not right. And she was feeling pretty traumatized by it. And so she put it out there with the hopes of having other women avoid a similar situation. And by the time we had even connected with Kimberly, the video had nearly 100,000 views on it. It went pretty crazy, pretty fast. And so one of our followers saw the video and encouraged Kimberly to reach out to us, which she did. And I immediately sent the video to Hermine Hayes Klein, and I'm sorry, she was hoping to be here today, but she had a meeting conflict. But Hermine is a human rights lawyer in Oregon, and she, confirmed what we thought was like, this was pretty serious and, likely a good place to actually take to court. So is that you, Kimberly?
Yes.
Okay, great. Oh, good. Okay, good. So anyway, so essentially we thought it would be a slam dunk, really. We thought it would be no big deal to find an attorney, but we realized pretty quickly that definitely not. Oops. Whoever that is needs to be muted. I think that was Kimberly, actually.
Sorry, I have 2 cell phones.
Okay. So which one are you on, the 209?
Yeah, I use the 209. It seems to work better.
Okay, great. So just leave the other one muted, and then that won't be a problem. So anyway, so I apologize. So we essentially spent over a year and a half looking for a lawyer. Sending out emails, and Kimberly was on it. She was sending emails and calling lawyers, and we tried everything, and we kept getting the same message. And Kristen, you might want to speak to that,
Sure.
The kind of responses that we were getting.
Yeah. So I think a few different people were reaching out to lawyers, and again, we thought this was going to be like a pretty straightforward process. Like we're going to call a lawyer who does personal injury or who does something, related to that. And they're going to say, oh, well, obviously this woman was violated and her rights were not respected. And the video shows really clearly that the doctor almost acted with knowledge and maybe even with malice. It's very clear. And that just didn't happen. So fortunately, we had one of our sort of newer team members was a lawyer in California, where Kimberly is. And
you're actually, Kristen, you're actually breaking up. You're breaking up quite a bit. Your digital.
Oh, geez. We just have to talk about that. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So since she is a practicing lawyer and not in the field, she preferred that we, kept her identity private. But she basically took it on as a project and set up a spreadsheet and started tracking all the lawyers that we were contacting. And then it turned into such a big project. She just sort of took it over because it actually needed project management. It turned into such a big deal. So I think she contacted, it was 70 or 80 lawyers, law firms, and organizations.
Kitty had a question.
What's that?
Kitty just started to ask a question.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Nope, maybe not. Okay, go ahead.
You know what? We could open the chat. And
I think that's probably a better idea. If you guys have a question or anything along the way, use the chat box, and I'll try and follow it as best I can.
Yeah, I'll try to follow it too, and then I can you. It's hard to do two things.
Yeah, go ahead.
So she was trying. She contacted all these people, and most of the responses were not interested. Some of them were a little more almost hostile, like, this is ridiculous, this is not a case. And then there were literally, you could count on one hand the people who said, yeah, I think you've got something here. And then, for whatever reason, they couldn't take the case. But I think someone just accidentally shared their screen.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I think we finally narrowed it down to there were only 2 or 3 lawyers in the entire state who we were able to find who were willing and able to approach this case. And the guy who ended up doing it was a civil rights lawyer, which I think is really awesome and turned out to be really helpful, which since Ramin isn't here, I'll just really briefly explain that, generally in childbirth injury cases, people go to a personal injury or medical malpractice lawyer. That's what we think of when we think of injuries related to medical care. In this case, we felt really strongly that this wasn't just about malpractice, like a doctor, cutting off the wrong leg or.
Oops, hold on, Kristen. You just got muted.
Oh, I don't know how that happened. Can you hear me? Yep. So anyway, I was just giving a couple of examples of medical malpractice. In this case, it wasn't so much that the doctor made a mistake or, performed, wasn't competent or did something that, related to his skill level or something like that. It was that this was a consent right violation.
Right.
This was all about the doctor not getting permission. In fact, getting a refusal from a patient and then going ahead and doing the thing anyway against her will. So it was pretty awesome that Mark Marin, as a civil rights lawyer, saw that and wanted to take on the case because it really is a consent issue, not really a malpractice issue. Although, there are some shared elements, of course.
Well, and I'd like to really point out something too that's important, that when Kimberly, when you reached out to us, your goal was not to sue this doctor, and it was never about, you were always really clear that it was never about the money. It was about protecting women and wanting them to, wanting to basically notify people about this person and make sure that people understood what was going on, right? You're probably muted, so you'll need to unmute yourself.
Hello, I unmuted myself. Is that better?
There you go. Yep, we can hear you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Sorry, did you hear
Yeah,
what
that
Dawn
was
just
never.
said?
Yeah. That was never my intention ever.
Yeah.
It just kept going that way because when you go to the hospital and you say, hey, you have someone working here who I told not to do something to me, and I warned everybody to let me know what they were doing before touching me, and then he just went ahead against what I said and just went overboard.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to talk to you after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us what happened when you tried to talk to them?
Well, they would see me in the hallways, or they would see me going there, and they would just send a message to whoever was responsible for those type of situations.
Like
and then
eventually, like the patient
um,
advocacy person or whatever.
Yeah.
But
I already forgot the lady's name.
It's okay. We
don't
don't
need
need
to contact. Yeah.
We can't use names today anyway. So
I meant her title. Like, I don't remember what her title was anymore.
But we also went to the police station. We went to, I went with Kimberly to go to the police station. She also filed a complaint at her clinic. And every time she went in, she was asking for help. She was asking for support. She was asking for therapy. She was asking for, pain relief because she was experiencing so much discomfort. And, their answer to her pain relief was to hand her a bottle of lubricant.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to get too much. Obviously people have been following the story and they've read all these articles and, that we've been doing. And, really, I wanted to just kind of touch on it. Needless to say, we finally, we did find Mark Marin. He, filed the case. There's lots of complicated things. It was originally potentially a federal case because she was being seen in a clinic, in a federal clinic, and so that took a long period of time to have the federal court basically not respond, which then means it goes down automatically to state at the local level, which was what we were hoping for. The next step was to go through depositions and those sorts of things, and which took a lot longer than we anticipated. The doctor was, declined doing depositions and just making everything a little bit more complicated and taking longer. Kimberly, I want, one of the things that we never talked about. Well, we're going to get to that. Let me just keep going here. We finally got a case filed and started going forward, as we said. And one of the things after the deposition was a court hearing to determine if the case essentially was viable. His attorneys were essentially indicating that it was a malpractice case, and that because it was a malpractice case, the statute of limitations had run out before she filed. Some of you may have seen the photo of us at the courthouse. That was probably one of the coolest, epic photos I think we've ever taken of us walking down the hall. It was super amazing, and the judge agreed that it was that it needed to stay in court, but he ordered mediation. And so, Kimberly, Kristen, do you want to just talk about what mediation is for people who don't?
Yeah, it's essentially trying to come to an agreement before going to trial. Or actually, you can be in trial and still, reach some sort of settlement so that you can then stop the trial before you go to a jury verdict.
Mm-hmm.
And these things are super tricky because there's so much public, misinformation and prejudice about childbirth cases, that it is really kind of risky to go to a jury of our peers about stuff like this. So essentially the judge was just trying to get this settled without going to trial, which is expensive and long and stressful and all of those things. And so generally speaking, it's a lot more efficient to get it worked out through mediation or, some non-trial solution.
Yeah. Kimberly, do you want to talk about how you felt, leading up to the mediation?
Well, yeah. Another thing I really wanted to touch on is, like you said, the depositions. They drag you through all the things that you don't want to talk about, like previous rape issues that you've had. And then that part also, affects you throughout the trial, throughout the whole time. And then just thinking ahead that you have to go through it for 5 more years or however long it takes. So all that takes a toll on your body, yourself, your self-esteem, your brain, everything.
Yeah, for sure. And let's talk about some of the things that happen. Beyond, the waiting and the answering questions for hours on end during a deposition about your past sexual history, can we also talk about the stalker that happened?
Yeah.
So that we don't know for sure that he was ordered by the defense. So we're not saying that, but Kimberly, go ahead and tell them what happened, because we've never shared this information.
Yeah. So what was happening to me is I was going to work, and I work in a warehouse type of place where people come in and out and they come shopping. So we had this guy just standing behind me for about 2 days, staring at me and not buying anything. And then every time I locked eyes with him, he would get nervous or walk away throughout in and out of the store. So, during that time, I was like, God, that's really weird. And I let LP know, and they're like, technically, we can't do anything about it because he's not doing anything to you. And then on the second day, I turn around, and the guy's standing behind me with boxes, just staring at me. And then at the same time, a guy in Southern California had knocked on my parents' house looking for me to sign a piece of paper. I didn't know who it was or who they are. And then pretty much 2 days later, I have a guy knocking on my door in Northern California, which is 5 hours away, asking me to sign a piece of paper. So, I was never at the door when this person knocked. I happened to be working or just not at home at the time.
Right.
But it was just really, really weird.
You were texting us while this was happening and taking photos. The guy was sitting there for hours, like during her whole shift, sitting away from her. And eventually, I think it was your partner, right? Your boyfriend that actually came over and
yeah.
Because
Rio's dad came to the parking lot of where I work and confronted him and because he's the one that originally answered the door.
Right.
And said, she's not here. So when he caught him in the parking lot, he's like, don't ever come to her job or come near her again because, that's not right. And then I guess the guy thought maybe I was single or nobody lived with me. But then, he learned very quickly that there is somebody else living in the house.
Yeah, I don't know if, that would be speculation. So we don't really know that. But I think that it was, the thing I want to point out.
So weird.
One more thing that was.
It was creepy.
Very stressful and creepy through the whole thing. And.
Well, yeah, from someone to drive 5 hours away to have you sign a piece of paper.
Well, but then not to
and
even
then
ask
somebody come looking at your job all at the same time.
It was
very weird.
Stressful. I know we were on the phone with you quite a bit during that time. So, the only thing that we've been able to surmise is that potentially he was a private investigator and that was there to find out what Kimberly was doing in her daily routine. So, so let's get to mediation. The mediation. So, the mediation, Mark had warned us that it was an all-day thing, and it was not a joke. We went into the mediation, myself, Hermine flew down from Oregon, and Jen Camel from VBAC Facts. And we just we're there as a support system for Kimberly, and wanted to, just be with her as she processed this. I can tell you that none of us, when we walked in there, anticipated that there would be a settlement. And I'm obviously giving that away, that there was a settlement that day, but we never imagined that that's what was going to happen. I think all of us intended to go all the way and take it to a jury so that, she could get a judgment that would stand in the public, right? Also not just, in a courtroom, but also in public, so that, other women who, potentially could experience this sort of thing could stand on that judgment and support.
Let me talk about that just a teeny little bit, just to explain to people. So if you get a jury verdict, then that's public information. That's something that you can potentially, other people wanting to bring cases about something similar can use your case to, help propel their own case. It can be a precedent. It's something that you can get media around to raise awareness about the issue or about whatever. So when you settle, no, well, I should say, but there's a really high price to pay for speaking years of expensive, stressful litigation.
You're digitalizing again, Kristen. Sorry.
Yes. Sorry.
Before you get into what the details are, let's talk to Kimberly a little bit about, let's talk about what happened that day, and, just talk about the process of mediation and how it felt. And my perception was that you felt still really strongly until, about, just taking it all the way until they started talking about what it was going to take to go the next level.
Yeah. It's just for that day, it was just stressful going through the whole process. But then when you start listening that we're already 3 years, almost 4 years in. And then just to think about another possibility of 4 to 5 years, the courts in LA are really congested also. I felt like it would just strain me, but I was also hanging on to only one little thing that would get me into court, that whole section.
Yeah. So
issue. So that was a big deal.
Yeah. We went through the whole day, essentially going back and forth, and they come in and a mediator comes in and says, basically he just said, Kimberly, you've got a really great case. I think you have a really strong case, but there's some challenges with it. And one of the things is, you're going on this one little thing. You're on this sliver that, even though we could substantiate it, as the lawyer sat there and did actually in front of us, Mark Marin did an incredible job. We were all just absolutely dumbfounded every time the mediator came in. He just laid it all on the table pretty respectfully and kindly, but very direct. And, I'll just tell you, my perception was, we'd been there all day, and suddenly he said, so I think it was Mark who basically said, so if we go to court, it'll be approximately about 3 more years. And Kimberly literally just stopped. The look on her face, and she just put her head down. It was like, and Mark was just saying it so matter-of-factly. It wasn't like he was trying to convince her not to do it. He was just like, so this is what's going on, that, this is what this looks like, and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden she just dropped her head down and she whispered, I can't do this. I'm going to cry. I can't do this for another 3 years. And she looked up at all of us, and she just looked at me and Hermine. It was like she was convincing us, and she just said, I can't do this for another 3 years. And that was it. There was no question about
I'll share a little bit of that moment.
Yeah.
And what it really came down to is I already feel like I lost all this time with my son, who, because I didn't feel good after this, the episiotomy and all that stuff. So when you put in my brain another 5 to 4 years doing this, it's like I'm losing another time with him that I already lost, and it was already taken away from the beginning. So it was already time to like process healing and all these things, because I was mentally, I was just done. It's too much, and I don't even know how I got that far.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an intense process, and I don't think that it's something that people understand when, they just, a lot of people flippantly say like, oh, you should sue him. Oh, like we hear it all the time, and I have to say that like this process has really made me question that whole thought process, of like, of what the reality is of actually suing someone. And I think the thing that you did, Kimberly, is, you did 2 things, or you did 3 things that you set out to do. First of all, raise awareness, which you did incredibly well by stepping out and sharing your story. There's been, over 200 articles written about your story. And some in, some of the largest mainstream media outlets like, Yahoo and Yahoo Parenting and the Daily Beast. And like, your story has been seen so much. And the other thing that you really wanted to do was prevent him from doing this to other women. And thankfully through this process, he relinquished his license.
Yeah.
And that was a huge win. And because, as we know, we heard from other women who had been abused by him throughout the process. And
yeah.
I think that was such, it's been impossible not to become friends, right, through this process. And
yeah,
I can't believe I'm being so emotional. I'm sorry, but this is, it's been trying on all of us, right?
Yeah.
But especially,
Kimberly, what do you feel like you accomplished here?
I feel like crying. I feel like I made my point, and then I can also share the feelings and what it feels like to actually go through it. And it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
It hurts and it's annoying and it takes off your daily routine of life. And I just feel like, after this happened to me, it just took away all my time with my son.
Mm-hmm.
If this had never happened.
Yeah,
but I feel good that I was able to, speak about it and just keep going, I guess.
So we can't share the details of the settlement as far as like the amount or anything, but I can tell you it's not grandiose in any way, shape, or form. But what it does, Kimberly, is why don't you share what you've been able to do from a therapy standpoint and physical therapy and all that stuff?
So, well, what I did was I got insurance. And I was able to actually see doctors that, maybe are okay to talk to me, because before I was on Medi-Cal, the state insurance or whatever, and they can't really help you. So when I went to go see a urologist at a specialty center, he did diagnose me with 3 vaginal medical conditions. And one of them is chronic vaginal pain, which is vulvodynia, which I'll have forever and it'll never go away. But I've learned a couple ways to treat it. So I've been in pelvic floor therapy for a while to strengthening my pelvic area. But the one thing that I'm not going to be able to do is actually take away the shock pains that I have in my vagina from the nervous, basically my nervous system. And I have muscle spasms. So I can control it a little bit with muscle relaxer cream that I have to do, which is uncomfortable. I don't want to be using that stuff all the time, but I need it now. So those are the things that I can basically utilize is the therapy parts, some yoga and stuff that keeps me stress free. So, you know, now that I'm out of the process of this, I'm a little bit less stressed out, which helps with my pain, because if I'm out in the park under a tree relaxing, you know, it does help with the pain that I'm going to have forever.
Yeah, nerve injuries are affected by stress. So that's really important for people to know. It's not just like, oh, now I can go get some massages. You know, it's like, no, this directly has to do with the pain you're in on a daily basis and how you're able to function.
So somebody commented, Kimberly, you're an amazing woman, and I'm so happy that you can start moving forward. Thank you for sharing your story. I think, you know, I don't want to pronounce your name incorrect. Katya. I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. I apologize. But I think that, you know, that sentiment is for, you know, I think it's everyone's sentiment for you, Kimberly, is that, you know, most women would never, you know, most women wouldn't go to this extent, and they wouldn't be so open to share their story so openly and publicly, and just to help other people. I think that that's just an enormous thing that makes you so brave. And, you know, is there anybody that has any questions right now? I just want to kind of open it up. If you have any questions, just post it in the chat box. So just put it in the chat box. If you guys can't see, the chat box is down. If you move your mouse, if you're on computer or phone, there should be a chat box there, link. So
I'll say about the pain treatments and stuff. Another case that I worked on that had a nerve injury from childbirth. One of the treatments that woman needs can cost thousands of dollars a month, and it's out of pocket because insurance just doesn't pay for it.
Right.
So that's just one example. So you can imagine, how quickly that you would run through some money. Imagine spending $5,000 a month just on a single treatment that you have to have in order to function in life. I mean, that's overwhelming. And another I think people don't understand sometimes about lawsuits is that people usually bring lawsuits because they've been damaged or they have damages of some kind. And this is one that you can't replace. It's not like somebody, you know, crashed into her car and really like you got a new car out of this.
Right.
It's not something that you can just, you know, compensate for and have it be okay again.
Yeah.
No, and I think that's the big deal. I think when people hear, you know, the money word, oh, it solved the issues. No, because vulvodynia is never going to go away. So there is no real hardcore resolution. And I'm pretty young, so this is forever.
Yeah.
So, and Kimberly, are you planning, I mean, we've talked a lot about getting some emotional therapy with a therapist. I know that you've done a little bit, but, you know, do you think you'll do some more consistent stuff to just help you go through the emotional processing?
Yeah, the therapy part. Yeah.
Good.
I'm going to have to do that. Right now I'm doing the pelvic because I'm finishing my last 4 sessions, and then I'll move on to something else. Because I don't want to overwhelm myself with appointments all over the place.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, with your job and your little guy, and that's a lot to manage. Well, I think that, like I said, what you've done is incredibly brave, and we are so proud of you and happy for you. Terry is saying the only way for the secret abuse of women to be stopped is if there is evidence and publicity. Kimberly provided a valuable service to all women. Thanks, Terry. That was really nice.
No, thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, you know, we get emails every week. I mean, at least once a week from women who are in different situations of abuse or coercion, or, who have had traumatic births. And so many of them, we can't help to the extent that we helped Kimberly. The reason that we were able to help Kimberly so much was because there was video evidence.
Yeah.
It's so difficult, if not almost impossible, to get a case solid enough to really have any real legs to it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we've learned. And, so we've set up lots of other options though. So remember, we have a complaint toolkit that we've developed since this whole thing with Kimberly, because, we learned pretty well about the complaint process, and, complaining to the medical board and filing a complaint at the hospital. And there's no guarantee that you'll get a response. I mean, the medical board, how long did the medical board take to respond? Like 9 months, 6 months, 9 months, something like that? Kimberly?
Well, the only response was that he surrendered, right? They were still working on it.
But they started doing the investigation.
When you complained.
But it took like 6 months or more.
Months. Yeah, almost a year.
Before they even reached out to you to say, hey, we're checking this out.
Yeah.
Surprised.
I don't know if that's area-based, because Los Angeles is just congested.
Yeah.
No, that's actually really typical. Like, that's really typical. Yeah. In fact, I just got an email yesterday or this morning from a woman who actually did get a good outcome from a medical board investigation, and it took 3 years.
Yeah.
But most of the people that I've worked with, or that we have worked with at Improving Birth, there's either no response, or they just decline to investigate, or, it's just not real effective.
But the complaint process is so crucial, I think. Like, imagine if women just started doing it on the regular basis when they experienced pressure or coercion or negative. I mean, it's how change happens. When people start filing complaints, even at this, specifically at the same hospital, if this hospital gets 3 or 4 complaints of the same thing, then, the hospital administration is more likely to stand up and go, okay, wait a second, we need to maybe look at this. If you get one-off complaint occasionally, it's just not effective.
Easy to blow it off.
It's easy to blow it off. Donna,
I would also say it's important that people understand that we know that hospitals do blow off multiple complaints. It's another crucial part of that is the women actually, not networking is not the word I'm looking for, but the women actually communicating with each other to know that this is happening. Like, women almost need a sort of united front on this, because I don't know how many women I've talked to, and you, I'm sure, can say the same thing, that they have made complaints. And certainly it is very clear that it is not the first complaint that has been made about that doctor, that nurse, or that facility or whatever. And it's just blown off. I mean, time after time after time after time. So
if
there's
you
got to be coordination almost.
If you go to medical board of your state and you make a search, it'll show up there if anyone has complaint also.
Filed against them, yeah. Even if it's...
Yeah. I'm not sure if that shows dismissed complaints, though. And I think it might varies from state to state. But so if they just don't respond to a complaint, I mean, somebody could have 100 complaints and nobody ever knows about it if the board declines to investigate. And I don't know how true that is from state to state. I'm just opining.
Yeah. Yeah. So, ultimately it's why we're here. It's why Improving Birth is here to begin with, is, the consumer needs to take a stand. They need to, it's why we have the rally each year. It's why we're going to march. Haven't heard about the March for Moms in DC. The bill is growing, for who's going to be there, but Every Mother Counts has joined on. March of Dimes has joined on. It's going to be a pretty big event. ACOG has even signed on, believe it or not. as a partner for this March for Moms to raise awareness about the significant issues in maternity care that need to be addressed for women in our country. And, it's up to us. It's up to us, the people who know and understand what's going on. There's this, the bottom up theory, right? Bottom up instead of the top down. And I read something super interesting about that, about how the bottom up thinkers only become bottom up thinkers from experience. And so it's our experience.
Wait, say that again?
That people only become bottom up thinkers from experience, meaning.
Oh, like personal experience.
Yeah, personal experience. Because of our own experiences of whether it's, being a birth professional and witnessing things in hospitals, whether it's being a mom who actually experienced the trauma themselves, we become that of understanding that we've got to make the change happen from the bottom up, and you only become that by experience. And so that means it's so crucial for those of us who have the experience to tell the story.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it doesn't happen. So
it was a little bit proof of that, even in this case and some others, is that when we were contacting media, a lot of the reporters who were interested were women who had bad childbirth experiences and got it.
Yeah, pretty much all of them.
Yeah. Well, the first person who broke
or I had, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's something to be said for that.
For sure. Yeah. So anyways, I with the settlement, is this still some sort of precedent and others, for others to try and get some sort of recognition? I just don't understand why there is no response from hospitals and lawyers. Did you read that, Kristen? Do you want to address?
Yeah, I saw that. Well, it's not a legal precedent. There's no verdict to point to. There's no case law that's been made here. However, that's not the only, value of what Kimberly did. And I think that's really important to understand. Kimberly got personal value out of this in a number of ways, other than getting that verdict. It's my personal opinion that culture is just as important as law, because law follows culture, culture follows law. And so more women will be able to bring cases like this when women like Kimberly are making it very public and putting it all over the place and raising awareness. As we change culture, then we can see the law change along with it, and of course it's a really long, difficult process, but it's got to be done. And then when she said, I don't understand why there's no response from hospitals or lawyers, because they don't need to, they don't need to respond. Every time a woman complains and a hospital says, sorry, not sorry, that's it. It's over. There's no accountability. So, that's kind of where we are left. And that's why, one of the things that we have done at Improving Birth, or did, it's a weird, when I was at Improving Birth, one of the things that we really focused on was raising awareness and getting media on things, because that's one way that you can really effectively hold people accountable and hold hospitals' feet to the fire, when you can't do it any other way.
Yeah. And she definitely tried. Kimberly, you definitely tried every other way possible besides doing it in the media and, public opinion, essentially. But, you won in public opinion by a landslide, by the way.
Yeah, nobody intends to go this way. Everyone closes the door when you're trying to tell everybody, and then it leads you to this sometimes.
Yeah.
And that wasn't easy either. We had to work for that media, we had to be careful about that. And we had to be strategic and plan, which is just, another example of barriers that women face when they have situations like this. This certainly isn't the only case of a forced procedure, but women aren't it's not going in newspapers.
Yeah. So Improving Birth is actually working on a fund. I think we're going to start raising funds for women like Kimberly who we can't get them, who aren't going to get the legal support, but they desperately need emotional and physical support because a lot of the times their insurance doesn't cover it. And or their copay, like, you're paying out already like $700 in copays, right, Kimberly, for your therapy, even.
Yeah.
So Improving Birth wants to start a fundraising, a fund for women who want to go and get therapy and who experience traumatic births. So that's something we'll be probably launching in the next few months.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we're going to do it in your name, Kimberly. We haven't talked about it. I think we're going to fund in your name.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I can talk about the mental health issue a little bit. That's a huge part of this. Kimberly, and feel free to talk about this as much as you want, Kimberly, just interrupt me. She already had PTSD prior to this, and then that was re-triggered, and that was really debilitating, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing was that I had already dealt with my issues with over 2 years of sexual assault therapy. I'd already dealt with my problems. And then just after this happened, it's like, I got to start all over again with one of the worst assaults that I've ever had. So.
Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, remember, even when you guys, sorry, Dawn.
No, go ahead.
Even when you all went to the police station, you had to go to the same police station where you had previously gone to report a rape.
Yeah, that's the same police station that I went to.
Yeah.
And then when he basically made me revisit the whole. It was like a rape, basically. Same everything.
Well, and the police officer was just so.
They laughed at me.
Yeah, literally, the guy was just so rude.
Laughing.
And he was just like, you can't file an assault case against a doctor. Like, he was just doing what he was supposed to be doing. That's what he does. He was so awful. And I can't even imagine what it would have been like if Kimberly if I hadn't been there to be like, excuse me, no, you don't know what you're talking about. And, I essentially, and then he was like, fine, go talk to the detectives. And then the detective said, yeah, and unfortunately we had to go back down to that same guy and have him file it. And he was just a jerk the entire time. Although he was a little less of a jerk when we went back down and the detective said yes to file the case. But it was just yet another example of, the system and that mentality of doctor knows best is pretty deep.
Yeah, it is deep.
Yeah. So.
And yeah, it's pretty deep.
Not to mention that Kimberly is Hispanic. So
yeah,
you're already facing that additional barrier.
Well, let's not forget when I went to originally get my medical records, they confused me for another Hispanic 26-year-old.
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And gave you her medical records, right?
He mixed our medical records up, so I had to file an addendum to prove that I did give birth to a baby boy. And I was like, as a matter of fact, I have it in my head. I was like, I have it on video, because the medical records he confused me with was a baby that had been deceased.
Yeah.
So there was just a lot of behind the scenes
a lot
stuff,
of
I guess.
incompetence.
A lot.
Yeah, we saw that a lot.
And disrespect.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's wrap it up. I think, there's a lot of people who want to get on about their day. I want to thank you guys all for participating and being here. And there's going to be a lot of people who watch this after. We will post this on our Improving Birth page for people who couldn't participate and be with us today. And I'd really just like to thank you, Kimberly, and thank all of you for your support. Your donations really supported her and helped her get the medical attention she needed early on. And I wanted to give people an opportunity. I don't know if anybody wants to just say some things to Kimberly, and I'm happy to unmute you too if you'd like to just say it direct, but if not, you can put it in the chat box. I'll give everybody just a minute or two to raise your hand. You can actually raise your hand, I think.
And then I just wanted to add, I wanted to thank everybody who helped me along the way. There's so many people that help behind the scenes that, you know, maybe because of what they do in their job that we're not allowed to mention their names and things like that. So just everybody, thank you for helping me along the way. And everyone who donated, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart because it really did help me. All my money when I work goes straight to bills and actually living in America. So I just want to thank everybody because it is really hard if you're a person who doesn't make enough money to even make it anywhere. It's really hard to travel and to drive your baby everywhere you have to go. So thank you.
You really accomplished an incredible feat, Kimberly. Yeah.
All right. Well, it doesn't look like anyone's wanting to comment or anything. I will just call it a day, you guys. Thank you so much for getting on the phone. Kimberly, I'm sorry we couldn't actually see you. I'm so grateful that you were here and able to participate. And we're actually going to post a blog post about the actual, a little more detail about the mediation and the results and everything. So we can do that. And I guess that's it. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Dawn. Thanks, Kimberly.
Thanks, Dawn. Thanks, Kristen. I'll see you guys later.
Thank you from everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.